Okay, my friends, Roger here, the Mudfossil discoverer. And what happened to NASA? Well, Curiosity rover says they may have found fossils on Mars. Well, let's see what they did find. These are some of mine. I have discovered soft tissue, perfectly preserved fossils. And Yale now agrees that there was a layer on Earth of perfectly preserved fossils, and they were preserved in a great saltwater flood. There's a lot of stuff that was written about that actually did occur. Now let's see about Mars. This goes back to 2014. They say, wow, we found fossils on Mars. And then guess what? That was the end of that story. Okay, you see what this says? NASA's Curiosity rover may have found fossils on Mars, and it absolutely did. Guess where this is from? ForbiddenKnowledge.com. They're not allowing us to see this. Okay, my friends, this is going to be fun. This is about the missions to Mars and the landing of the Curiosity primarily. They're talking about the InSight mission, end of that mission on Mars, and what did they discover? Well, let me show you what they discovered and is not allowed to be spoken of. They discovered this stuff in 2014. Okay, my friends, these are the Mars blueberries. And they're all over the place up there, and they have no clue what they are. They're concretions. Well, guess what? They're on Earth, too, and I know exactly what they are. Let me show you. All right, you saw the Mars blueberries. Basically, that's what they are. Only these are what they call the Moki marbles. They're in Arizona and Utah. And guess what these are? These are the same as those, only they're a little bit bigger, and they're eroding out of this wall of flesh. And you say, oh, Roger, that can't possibly be. That's just impossible. Well, exactly what all of the scientists say. They cannot open their mind. This is what interstitium is. It's exactly what that is right there. That's the mucosal layer. Skin, fascia, whatever. Once you get into here, you're in the interstitium. That's this. The little black balls are the anchors. They anchor the flesh so that it can twist and pull and do that and come back. And here's what they look like inside of the human body, or inside of a creature's body. That's where these little balls are. And they are everywhere. And obviously, as you can see, the skin has eroded away and the balls are left. And you say, oh, Roger, that's impossible. A creature that size couldn't possibly exist. Well, I would normally agree with you. However, let me show you this. Now, if you haven't seen this, I know it's going to be shocking. From here to here across North Africa is what's called Typhon, the dragon. He is attacking this gigantic fish. I'm sorry, that's just a fact. There's nothing I can do about it. And this was all written about, and it's exactly identical to what Apollodorus wrote. And he said Typhon's was so huge he outtopped all the mountains, and his head often brushed the stars. These are the things that were written. These are the things that exist. This is not allowed. I've been showing this for 7 years. I've never had one comment from academia or any of JPL, NASA. I've tried them all. I've sent over and over and over. They refuse to discuss this. They refuse to discuss everything that's on Mars. And when I show you what's on Mars, it was the same thing. It was gigantic biology. The Mars crab is an artery. Okay, let me just make it very obvious. This is the whole layout. Typhon's head is right up here, and his neck is cut right down here. Here it is, what it looks like. And there's his head, and there's his neck going down. Now, I highlighted it so you can see exactly where his head is. And you can come back and look at this later if you need to. But that is where his throat comes down. This is all runoff down here. This is not his body whatsoever. All right, here we go. Okay, my friends, just a quick dragon scale verification. Here is Typhon. Here is his head. And there is his red flared eye coming down his head, which I had outlined. You can go back and look at it. Here's his throat, goes all the way down. That throat is completely encased in dragon scales, as you see. This is the outside layer of his throat, and it goes all the way down. These are little dragon-scaled plates, and that way there he can articulate his neck. He's got little crevices going between each little batch of them. And this is his whole throat goes down. Now, you have Google Earth. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time going over every little detail here. But right over here is where Zeus cut his throat. And it is bleeding red blood still into the desert, which makes things grow as green can be. Blood, they sell blood meal to make things grow green. And that's about as green as it gets in the desert. This is his entire body. He's hitting that fish with, and that fish has been invaded. His scales and everything have been eaten right through, and you can see all his blood vessels all the way down to the arteries, which are these big ones, to the blood vessels, which are these little ones, to the capillaries, which are here, and then they dump their contents into the veins. This is the way the blood system works in a creature's body. And this is the dragon venom, or whatever creates the fire that they spit. And I mean, it is nasty. This is coming out of his, these are the beards. They all have beards, and that apparently is where that stuff shoots out of. Look at that. Isn't that nasty? And that is what ate through that fish's back. Now, we can laugh at this, we can neglect it, we can avoid it, but it's never going to go away. This has been 7 years I've been showing this, since I found Atlantis, which is here. And the Straits of Atlantis was right there. Isn't that cool? Nobody talks about this. You know, they're just now starting to talk about this. I've been talking about this 7 years. And I had all the details on this. Video after video after video. And I sent them to everybody that should have been concerned. This is the big drain off of the Sahara Ocean. It created the Cape Verde Islands and this alluvial plain. Now, it is what it is. You can avoid it. You can hide from it. You can hide from Quetzalcoatl, if you'd like. You can hide from that guy right there, Quetzalcoatl. These were giant, 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 giant creatures. I have no explanation for them other than that they were here. And it's exactly what was written about in Apollodorus. And he was the first writer in history, basically, to him and Ovid and Hesiod and, you know, Plato and, you know, Plutarch and all those, Seneca, all the writers of the early history wrote the same things. And we've just laughed at them and denigrated anybody that would even think about it. Trust me, I've been denigrated to as far as you can denigrate somebody. All right, the reason I'm doing this today is because they just wrapped up this mission, Insight, end of mission. This is another mission. I did Curiosity, which is the first one. Now this is another one. Now they have Perseverance. So let's just take it from what they should have been looking at from the beginning. Don't forget, this is a different mission. This was 2014. It was a long time ago. That's 8 years ago. Okay, we're going to look at this, but before we do that, this was a paper I wrote both 2015 about Atlantis and about the dragon and all that stuff. This is Atlantis and the draining of the Sahara, and that's a friend of mine, Paul Amatucci, is writing books highlighting my papers, and I have nothing to do with the books. The books are just my papers, and you know, like Introduction to Mudfossils and so forth. And my name is on them, but I didn't write these books. I wrote the papers that these books are based on, and we're having a whole new library. Because everything has to change, we have to start all over again. So that's what we're doing. Now, let's look at the Mars crap. Okay, I, again, did the mud fossils. I discovered them. I studied them more. I am more in tune with the Earth and geology and biology than anybody else on the face of the planet. Anybody wants to confront me, I am confrontable. This is an artery, and that is a vein. These are the blood vessels that run off the artery into what they call the muscle sarcomeres. This is it right here. This is a blow up. It's right down there. Now, let's look at that carefully. What do we see over here? What is all this nonsense? these big stripy looking things here and these blocks running around here, and that's where the crab is. It's feeding its blood into these muscle sarcomeres. They pinch together like this. Let's see if we can find a little more detail about that. Okay, so I showed you the crab, I showed you the sarcomeres. Here's what they look like in real life. That's exactly what they look like. The red parts erode out, and all you're left with is the connective tissue. These erode away, so you have these stripes, and then you have these stripes going this way. And that's exactly what you see. You see the stripes going this way and the stripes going this way. And that's the feeder that feeds it. Now, I have one in my shop here that's the same thing. Let me see if I can find that. Here it is right here. This is where the artery came out and fed blood into here, and then it fed into the muscle. It's not exactly identical, but it's damn close. This is all muscle sarcomeres. And that's where the blood bled into it. Just like here. That's where the blood bleeds into it, and these are all the sarcomeres. All right, so that's case number 2. We have the blueberries, we have the Mars crab. Now what's this? This is the Mars Morse code. And you say, ooh, Roger, what is that? And I say, well, it's the Mars Morse code. And what it is, it's called Interstitium. And what is Interstitium? Well, you see all these little balls? Those are the blueberries. You see these straps running from the ball out and so forth? And these are like pinched together, and these are wide open here, and these are like sort of in the middle. This is skin. That is skin from a gigantic creature's body. And you see this? This is why I know we're on Mars, because this is basically sandblasted. There's not enough moisture out there to make mud and run off like we do here on Earth. This is basically sandblasted from just continuous dusting of winds, sand and so forth. And it ended up getting rid of all the weak stuff, the flesh, just the cheap stuff goes. And it left the basement layer and the interstitium that sits on top of that. And it's well known now. And actually, this was just discovered recently, the interstitium. They never knew this. And a lot of that happened because of my research. I kept working with another guy. I said, what is this stuff? What is all this interstitium stuff? And then they declared it a new organ. Literally, I'm not kidding you. They declared it a new organ in 2018. Okay, see it right here? There it is right there. There's the interstitium. This is 2018. They just discovered it, a new organ. This layer they never knew existed before, because by the time they ever saw it in the autopsies, it was flat as a pancake. And they never knew it existed of these fluid-filled highways until I started digging into it. And I kept asking questions. What's going on with this? That was back in 2010, 2012, because I'm seeing it in all my mud fossils. I see the interstitium, all these little balls, and they're all over the Earth. These balls are everywhere, and they're not tiny like this. On the Earth, there's 60 tons, a lot of them. Absolutely enormous. The creatures that were here, as you saw, Typhon, he runs all across North Africa, the whole entire North Africa. Just think of the size of the things that were here. And when these died, what happened, in my opinion, is the insects living on them, the ticks and so forth, were really like the dinosaurs. The biggest of the dinosaurs were like little insects living on these things, and they had to go somewhere, and they left and they walked around for a while. And the other ones that were living in the guts of them, which are like parasites, they went right into the ocean. And there's right there, they went right into the ocean, and they were the sea monsters that ate all the ships. And they actually did a congressional investigation about sea monsters not too long ago. Why was there so much written about them? Why were they so specific about what they looked like and everything? And this is exactly what they look like. This is written identical to what is on the face of the Earth right now that can be seen. No difference whatsoever. Quetzalcoatl, Typhon, all of them. Now you saw the dragon here, Typhon, and there's more than that. There's Quetzalcoatl too, found him. This is up on Mars. Curiosity rover found this. That's supposed to be up on Mars. It looks like a dragon to me. And what happened with Mars, it was almost hit Well, no, it was hit, actually. I'm sorry. Earth was almost hit. Mars was hit. Here's the collision. This is wider than the United States. It collided here, destroyed Mars. Venus came out of Jupiter. This is all written about as well. You have to read Velikovsky. Jupiter gave birth to Venus. Venus almost hit Earth and caused a giant flood and the catastrophe that created all my mud fossils. And like I said, Yale wrote a paper that said there was a worldwide, one thin layer of perfectly preserved creatures, top to bottom sizes, from microscopic to macroscopic. And they happened just like that. And this was from the flood, where we almost were impacted by Venus. Now, what can I show you on Earth that approximates these gigantic sizes of that the Earth is really a mud fossil? Did I show the books about the mud fossils? I think I did. But let me show you something about Petra. You see Petra right there? Wow, that's Petra. Isn't that cool? Well, guess where Petra is if you looked at it from a long ways away? Here it is right here. There it is. What's all this stuff? Sarcomeres. Those are all sarcomeres. Those are sarcomeres. That is cut into a blood vessel, an artery. These are the runoff of the artery. Now, can I show that in more detail? I absolutely can. This is blocks of sarcomeres. You see the dark side here and the other side, and all the stripes running between them. Look, see them here? Those are muscle fibers. I'm not kidding you. And this is just nothing but blood. And this, blood is nothing but mud. It's dried mud. And fleshy bits, blood cells and all that stuff. Now, what's inside the treasury? Well, there's more blood and gore. There it is right there. There's blood. That's just, it's saturated with blood. This is connective tissue. That's inside the treasury. All right, we are looking at a biological mud fossil universe, literally. And get yourself a gynecologist. This here is on Earth. This is called a Thracian womb cave. And this is well, you know, I'm calling it a vagina. Now, this little line here, I forget what they call it. It's where your gut seals together, this particular line. I can't remember the name of it. But anyway, this is a vagina. Now, this is a coffin berth. You see how this wall is nice and smooth here? You see this wall? Look at this. Okay, this here's on the Earth too. There's a zillion giant body parts. There was giants everywhere. This is a vagina. And that little line right down, I think they call that the hunter's line or something like that. But it's where your gut attaches together, that little bitty tiny thin line. See that little line right there? Now, this is a coffin birth. She died pregnant. That's a baby's head. And that baby is being forced out of the womb. You see his nose and everything, the eyes? This is tissue that's being just broken through. That's what it should look like right there. But this is a coffin birth. And it might have been twins, because there's something down here too, it looks like. But anyway, this is, that's a baby's head. This is a coffin birth. And that's the Thracian womb cave here on Earth. And I have mud fossils here in my own yard, in my own property, that are a 3-foot long fingertip, still has the fingernail and fingerprints on it, and was DNA tested human, mitochondrial DNA human. All right, you see that? This is the same rock as that. That is a bone, whatever it was, a shoulder or whatever. That's a little tendon piece, this piece here, and that's the muscle. This piece right here is almost unerodable. It is tough, 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 and tough times 10. Now, what is this little piece here? You see the white strips through here? I'm going to show you one that's still left on the Earth that did not erode away because it's tougher than hell. There it is right there. That's that little spot. It's curved here. That is where the main tendon emplacement is. And this is the main strap that comes out. And then at that other part, it makes into an abrupt transition, turns into the muscle. This is tough, tough, tough times 10. This is not millions of years in one picture. This guy fell over dead, and then it was there. All the other stuff eroded away, because it's very easy to erode. This just happened to continue to keep that tendon, and that tendon is tough. You see that? That's the tendon right there. That is tough, tough, tough. And right there was that little round ball that I showed you at the end, and that's all of these little fibers come down. Then it makes an abrupt transition and goes into this red muscle. That just washes right away. The bone part can wash away easily in the ocean. This, they don't wash away. They do not wash away. All right, I showed you what the sarcomeres look like. There they are right there. Well, guess what? Turkey had the same situation the other day. These are sarcomeres. Those are sarcomeres. You see this red blood here? You see the red? Underneath here, the red blood washed out and this whole thing collapsed. This was that giant collapse, a huge earthquake. But an earthquake is a split. This was a collapse. Underneath, all the red blood ran out, and I can show you that in a Mudfossil here somewhere. Here it is right here. This is exactly the same thing as I just showed you in Turkey. And you have the layer at the top, which is the dirt and so forth, and then you get, but it really is like skin and basement layer of skin and tissue above the muscle. So it's the stuff, the fleshy stuff. Then you get into the muscle. The muscle has a lot of blood in it, as I showed you before, because it has to be flushed with blood to work. But blood is very fluid, it runs right out. So now you've got these big cavities under these hills. The hill ran down this way. The blood washed out underneath. Whether it washed out or not, I don't know. Maybe they dug caves in here to hide. This is big trouble over there in Turkey, Syria. They got all kinds of... My point is, whatever was down here washed out or was removed or whatever, collapsed. That's what happened there. And here it is. If you can't see that, I don't know how to help you. See it right here? You see it right here? That's it right there. These are the sarcomeres. These are the same sarcomeres that we showed before. And this is the blood running out. You see the cracks running down them? There's going to be, it's just what it is. Wherever the blood was here, collected way under here, it ran out. And then you had that enormous, terrible, horrendous collapse. I think 500,000 people or something. I don't know, a ton of people died. Just absolutely amazing, terrible, terrible, terrible. So anyway, we've seen everything. Here's Zeus killing Typhon. Now, they didn't even know that Typhon, it was said in the ancient texts that Typhon was a hybrid between man and beast. He had coils below his human legs, thighs. They show him with a human head. He does not have a human head. So even in the ancient texts, they didn't know Typhon was really a dragon. I mean, that's a dragon's head. That's not a human head. He is a hybrid. His legs and his thighs, the thighs here are like humans. Down here, these coils go all the way around. I mean, absolutely amazing. And his whole body runs here. He stood up. He was touched the stars. There's his head. He's killing the fish. Or he's trying like hell. Well, the fish is dead. Now, I'm going to leave it with this. These guys had class. Look at that. That's amazing. Look at this guy. It's incredible. Now, was this real? Well, let me tell you something. I think it was. The ancient texts say that these guys were gods. Not only were they gods, just stuck in a god realm. They could do anything they want. They could be animals, they could be ants, they could be mushrooms, and they turned themselves into people to come down and have sex with the people that were living here, even though this guy here was a planet. The same thing with Zeus. Zeus is Jupiter. Zeus came down and had sex with all kinds of women. He was a womanizer. And that's what happened. They could turn themselves into animals and everything they wanted. That's why they always look so good. Okay, so we're going to just start a new education, basically. We got new books coming out. They're all going to be based on the ancient texts. Basically, we're going to look at those and reference these. We're not going to laugh at these anymore. No laughing. My stuff is DNA tested. I had 3 mud fossil samples tested. One of them was a gigantic fingertip. I suppose I should show you. These are going to be our new books. We're going to base them on material evidence, chemistry, biology, history, mythology, which is factology. That's what we're going to have to start calling mythology, factology. All right, I showed you, I have the DNA reports, and they were very, very well done. That goes back 7 years as well. This is my fingertip, one of them. This is the fingerprints. There they are right there. Those are the sweat pores. My thumb is the same width as one fingerprint ridge, like it's on your fingers. Now, here's the side with the fingernail on it right there. You see this? It's approximately 3 feet long, front there to here. This is the pad where it bumps onto your neck's bone, vein and artery. That's the piece I broke off right around this fingernail. And that had the fingerprints on it, as I showed you uno momento ago. All right, so these are these two. Now I also, and that's DNA tested. And I had to break that off to get down inside. There's no blood in here. So you can't get any blood out of there. Well, there's a tiny little bit here and there, but nothing like under here. This is saturated with blood. And I mean saturated. That's the kind of blood that's in fingertips. I mean, they're just completely saturated with blood. You get tons of blood out of fingertips. So this also I have on my property, which is a hand. It's a left hand. That's the tendon running down from the pad. That's the cleave between the 2 pads of your hand. This is the grip skin from this one, the silver stuff. See it peeling off here? That's the same stuff as I smacked off the other one. This I have fingertips and all kinds of stuff from that. Also CAT scanned and DNA tested. That's a human hand, very, very large. And what else haven't I showed you? Well, this is not. It was fully understood. It was written about. It's carved in the walls. They knew they had giants all over the place. And if you ever read Enoch, he said there were 3,000 ells tall. That's 2.5 miles. And I see no dispute with that whatsoever. When you see this, Petra, and you see where it came from, and you see this is muscle sarcomeres, I don't know what kind of a creature it was, but I know there was giant human beings on here. And if you read Apollodorus, you believe it, because there's things written about Typhon, no question whatsoever they were true. So if Typhon's stuff was true, I'm going with the whole thing being true. Gaia being Earth, Tartarus being hell, Typhon being the offspring of Tartarus and hell, having intercourse. This is all new stuff. And if anybody wants to confront me on this, that is what I want. That is what I want. Read Immanuel Velikovsky, Worlds in Collision. I wrote a book called Minds in Collision when I ran into the collision with Yale, and the minds at Yale were so closed to all my research, even with my DNA tests, my CAT scans, my specimens, and they finally did write a paper in 2016 from Yale, Derek Briggs, who I was in communication with, saying that yes, there was a global worldwide flood that caused all the mud fossils, and they don't know why it happened. I do. Look up Velikovsky. Everything I'm showing you, everything here that was in my yard, all of these fossils are on the surface of the earth, and they were all flat on one side because there was a great flood, just like that. And here's another one, DNA tested. CAT scan, flat as a pancake, just like that. There's the depression of the heart. The guy died laying like this because it was a hot saltwater flood. We almost were impacted by Venus, and then of course it did go and impact Mars. Mars is gone. We were on the margins, and everything that was here was preserved in this soft-bodied creatures all over the earth in this one layer. And Yale agrees. They wrote the paper saying yes. And that was a year after I wrote my paper. I wrote my book saying, I was really, really upset that nobody would listen. I absolutely couldn't believe the response I got from people that I had thought were looking for honesty. They're not looking for honesty. They're looking to back up what they had, their statements they made. They don't want to have anything to do with this sort of stuff that points to God or gods or creation or whatever you want to call it. Because everything's up in the air right now, my friends. Everything.